I actually remember the day I learned of the plan to hold the largest music festival ever. It was at the news shop in the middle of town one afternoon in late winter of '69, when Bill McCord, drummer for the local band Fear Itself, walked up to me and offered to split, as we had done so many times before, a Three Musketeers bar. We both agreed that there was nothing better in the world than Three Musketeers. How could anything that tasted so good ever be bad for you? Bill had an excited look on his face like he couldn't wait to tell somebody. Without having to ask, he said that the big one was coming. The big what? I asked him. Hey, man, do you remember that smiley guy who walked with Jules up the hill to the office last year at the show? Yep, his name was Michael. Aha, Michael Lang to be exact, he said. Okay, so, I asked, what about him? Well, I was hanging out with Jules last night when he gets a call from Lang. All I remember hearing Jules say was, yeah, oh wow, man, it's really going to happen. Then he went on to say, as we both took another bite from our halves of the candy bar, that by the end of summer, we're going to have the show to top all shows anywhere at any time in history. A music festival, man. All the top bands will be there. 50,000 people will be there. Little did we know what would truly become, as we both gave each other a handshake and took the last bite of our wonderful treat together. As I begin to think about what was going to happen, I couldn't help recalling the things that went into creating that event that was about to go down. The pebble had been dropped into the pond, and the waves that rippled outward toward the shore were about to rise up like a tidal wave and encompass everything, just like Jules said it would. I remember giving Bill the biggest smile as we hugged each other again and went our separate ways. The next person I ran into was Jocko. Did you hear, man? Did you hear? He looked at me and asked, about what? The show, man, I said to him, and he just glared at me and said, tell me something new. I started to think about what else to say, but by that time, he was already down the road. I spent the rest of the day feeling really good, yet had doubts about some things, and by the time that my dad got home from work, I had a lot of questions for him. Of course, he was completely unprepared. He'd just gotten home, and all that he could say was, wow, he's really going to do it? He told me that he would get back to me after he checked a few things out. By the next day, though, everyone in town was talking about it. I remember when Max came up to me and asked me about what was coming next, like I was the one to know. Well, as I looked at him, all I could say was, it looks like it's really happening, man. We knew that it all was nothing more than simply a work in progress. This was the unsaid mantra that we seemed to operate under the umbrella of a work in progress. We knew as a town that somehow, in some way, that our voice was about to be heard. In the days that followed, we waited with anticipation for the upcoming event. One of the best ways we found to do that was to play music, paint on canvas, and expound the poetry that the world would soon hear. This, in fact, wasn't any different than the things that we were doing before. We were always playing and painting and writing. It was just that now, at this point, it all seemed more important. After all, a person can't choose to be an artist. We are what we are, and there were a lot of us simply waiting for the right opportunity, and what an opportunity it was. I remember, while hanging out on the village green, lots of well-known artists that day would appear all the time. It really didn't matter what part of town you were standing in, really, or what time of day it was. If you were standing anywhere between the top of Mill Hill Road and Tinker Street, down to the Espresso, back in '68 or early '69, in any place long enough, you'd run into Tim Hardin as quickly as Frank Zappa or Van Morrison, who used to come popping out of Pan's Deli. The members of the band, the Fugs or Blues Magoos, along with members of the Paul Butterfield Blues Band, would walk by. John Sebastian and even, oh yeah, might I mention, Dylan might also appear. The town was also becoming more of a home to an incredible number of others who were in one way or another connected with the arts in general. Woodstock was in all of its glory. We just waited together, sharing notes, while the day of the show approached. Chapter 13, The Festival. Michael Lang, the festival's producer, worked with a few partners to put the event on. There were several places that were set for it to be, but they all, one after the other, fell through. It seemed that no one wanted 50,000 hippies coming to party in their backyards. Who knew? Yet he always had this confident smile on his face as he walked around town befriending all of us locals. One of my favorite hangouts was the record shop just off the village green. We used to love it when he would walk in. Basically, he'd pick out all of the new releases for the week. Usually there were 15 or 20 of them, and at $5 each, it made the shop's day. Finally, they were able to settle on a location for the show that was going to stick. The problem, though, was that there was only a few weeks left to do all of the prep and set up logistics. It was a miracle that it even came together at all. But all we knew, without a doubt, just like Michael did, that it would.